Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the 30th installment of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links Best Deck series. Today I'm going to be showing you a deck known as Right Back At You. Before the video starts, I'd just like to apologise for my late upload. I did literally just move from one state to another over the weekend, so it's a bit hard to record and upload during that time. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the best character for this deck, and the only character, is Yami Marik, with the skill Right Back At You. This skill can be used in the main phase of your next turn, following the turn in which you took battle damage. Select one face-up monster on your field. This turn, the selected monster's attack increases by half the battle damage received in the turn you last took battle damage. This skill can be used once per turn. So basically, your opponent hits you, you take that battle damage, cut it in half, add that number to the attack of one of the monsters on your side of the field. Now keep in mind, this skill, how it's written, is a bit misleading. It's not half of all the battle damage you took last turn, it's half of the last monster that hit you. So what I mean by this is if your opponent has a 200 attack monster and a 300 attack monster on the field and he hits you with both of them, you don't cut that number in half, you cut the number in half of whichever one of those two monsters hit you last. Whether it be the 200 one that hit you, you get 100 extra damage. If the 300 one hit you, you get 150 extra damage. Not 250 from half of both of them. Don't worry if you understand the skill, at the end of the video there will be gameplay that shows it in action, plus when I go through the actual strategy it'll be a bit more easier to understand why we use this skill. Alright, now go to the deck list. So, just in advance, I apologise for pronunciation as per normal, because I don't know how to pronounce some of these cards. This deck contains 1 Lava Golem, 3 Skystarray, 3 Inaba White Rabbit, 2 Anti-Magic Arrow, 3 The Golden Apples, 1 Windstorm of Etaqua, 2 Aegis of Gaia, 2 Nutrient Z, and 3 Enchanted Javelin. So there's not really much to talk about with this deck or really give replacement options for. Basically the reason there's 2 Aegis of Gaia and 2 Nutrient Z is because both of them can be very situational, as if you have 3 Aegis of Gaia, you can't really have 3 of them on the board, because if 3 of them on the board, since they're continuous, you will no longer have any spell and trap slots here left, so it's better to only have 2 of them in the deck. And also, the Nutrient Z is situational, as it can only be procced when a 2000 attack monster swings at you, so it's better to have a variety covered rather than trying to cover the best case scenario. And other than that, there's not really much else to say about the deck list, it's just kind of pretty standard for how this deck runs. Alright, now I'll talk about the strategy behind the deck and basically how it works. Basically, this deck works by using your skill combined with direct attack monsters to just hit your opponent for a ton of life point damage without having to worry about anything they've got on their board. So the only way this works is you have direct attack monsters and a ton of life point gains. When your opponent hits you, you don't give a shit about it, you can just take the damage and heal it back up. So the 2 direct attack monsters you have is Skystarray and Inaba the White Rabbit. Although these are kind of similar in stat wise and in like their role in the deck, they both have very unique advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of Skystarray is that when it attacks, it banishes itself from the board, and then returns to the board during your following turn. Therefore, obviously, during your opponent's turn, he can't do damage to it or attack it or anything because it banishes itself. So it's technically still on your board because it's back there the next turn, but it banishes itself during your opponent's turn, so it stays safe. Obviously, the disadvantage to Skystarray is that if your opponent activates anything like an enemy controller or a Karibo or something to change it into defense position, it will negate its attack and leave it on the board so it won't banish itself and keep it safe. And this is where Inaba the White Rabbit's advantage comes in. What Inaba the White Rabbit does is once you play it, if it's a normal summon, it will return to your hand during the end of the turn. So it can never be destroyed by anything your opponent does unless it's during your turn. So where this is an advantage, it's also kind of a disadvantage, as compared to Skystarray, when you play this card, it won't be on the board next turn for you to then use to attack, you'll have to replay it again, therefore using your normal summon up. So it's an advantage in that it can't be killed as easily as Skystarray can, but it's also a disadvantage in that you can't just have multiple of them just lined up on the board since it returns to your hand. So to sum it up, basically you just play Skystarray first, as it doesn't return to your hand, so it's better to have a Skystarray on the board when you play your Inaba, so then you can just kind of do 2 attacks a turn. But if your opponent has a large backline and you know he's going to have lots of enemy controllers or Kribos or whatever, it's probably better just to play the Imba the White Rabbit over the Skystarray, as the Skystarray, as soon as it's changed to defense position, it's useless, it will just become a blocker. The next card I'm going to talk about is the Anti-Magic Arrows. Anti-Magic Arrows is in here basically to guarantee lethal on your opponent, as during that final-ish turn when you want to kill your opponent, it can get very close to being a loss for you, as you'll normally have used up all of your life point defense cards. It normally comes down to one big hit at the end. So if you don't have anti-magic arrows, you'll find a lot of your games just become a lot harder in trying to actually finish off your opponent, especially if you runs a ton of backline cards. If you don't know what anti-magic arrows does, what it does is at the start of your battle phase, if you activate it, your opponent from then onwards cannot activate any trap or spell cards. So a lot of the time this card will be a surprise card, in that it's kind of useless if your opponent knows you've got one, because when your opponent has, let's say, something like an enemy controller, they can activate the enemy controller anytime they like. But most players, 99% of the time, will activate the enemy controller only once you swing in to attack your opponent and have declared your attack. Because that's how it works against every other card in the game. Every other strategy in the game, you always activate your enemy controllers or whatever when your opponent declares the action, rather than trying to preemptively predict their action. So let's say for Skystarray, for example, your opponent won't change the Skystarray to defense position until the battle phase when you swing with it. So this gives you time to activate your anti-magic arrows to prevent him from doing that. Whereas realistically, if your opponent knows what deck you're playing and knows exactly the cards in it, he can preemptively just activate enemy controller during your turn at any point and change the Skystarray to defense position, and that's it, it's done. It won't be able to change back to attack position and your monster can't attack. I'm sorry if this is kind of a little bit complicated, it's kind of hard to explain. At the end of the video there will be a showing of anti-magic arrows in action, but it's kind of hard for me to explain it until you've actually tried out the card. Anti-magic arrows also has the advantage of your opponent can't activate any spells or traps in response to its activation. Alright, now I'm going to talk about the life point defense you have in this deck. So this card runs 5 life point defense cards, all of which give you life points excluding Windstorm of Etaqua. So excluding Windstorm of Etaqua, each of these cards wants you to take damage first. So it obviously, because of your skill, you want to take damage first, as if you don't take battle damage, you can't then have that extra damage buff to add to your monsters to hit your opponent back with. So the absolute perfect card for this deck is the Golden Apples, as what this allows you to do is take battle damage, heal back up that battle damage, and then spawn a blocker card which will have the exact same attack and defense as the battle damage you just took. So if your opponent has a 3000 attack monster, swings it at you, you will then heal not only the 3000 attack you just took, you will then spawn a 3000 attack and defense monster on the board, ready to defend, so your opponent can no longer use that monster to just hit your life points every turn without dealing with this big threat first. The only weakness to the Golden Apples is you have to take the battle damage first. Unlike all the other life point gain cards in this deck, the Golden Apples will only heal you after you've taken the damage, so it becomes useless when you're at a low life point value. The next card that's kind of perfect for this deck is Enchanted Javelin, as this is a very simple card. It just heals you before your opponent hits you. So when your opponent's going to hit you with a 1500 attack monster, it will heal you for the 1500 attack, and then you'll take the 1500. Very simple effect, but it's easily a good way to proc your skill. Nutrient Z is kind of similar to Enchanted Javelin, only it heals for a flat 4000 amount, and it can only be used when your opponent swings at you with a monster that has 2000 attack or more. So this card is, in theory, stronger than Enchanted Javelin, in that most of the time 4000 is going to be more attack than Enchanted Javelin will heal, but normally your opponent may not actually have the 2000 attack monster on the board, so Nutrient Z may not even be able to proc its effect. The last life point gaining card is Aegis of Gaia. This card is pretty simple. You activate it, you gain 3000 life points. The downside of it is, if your opponent destroys it, you will then lose the 3000 life points. So luckily for this meta, I know there is not much spell destruction currently being played, as opposed to the old one in like the old Harpy era where there was every deck had spell destruction. Currently there isn't much, so this card, you can quite often get away with using it. And the last life point defense card in this is Windstorm of Etaqua. This can be used for another reason other than just defending yourself from your opponent's attacks. It can also be used to defend your creatures from attacks. So if you've got Skystarray on the board and it has been turned to defense position by a Karibo or something, you can use Windstorm to stop your opponent destroying it if you want to continue to use Skystarray to attack. But most of the time, you're just going to use Windstorm to make sure you don't die, or as kind of a delay card if you haven't drawn any of your direct attack monsters yet. Now the very last card I'm going to talk about this deck is Lava Golem. This card's in the deck because it's actually an insane card on its own, and it works really well with this deck. What Lava Golem does is when you try to summon it, it will take 2 monsters your opponent controls, use them as tribute, and then summon itself to your opponent's board, giving them a 3000 attack, 2500 defense monster. But this monster, whoever controls it, will take 1000 damage a turn. So Lava Golem is absolutely insane for this deck, as it destroys 2 of your opponent's monsters, and then it will help you proc any of your life point gain cards, plus help you do more damage with your ability. It will even proc Nutrient Z, as its attack is 3000, which is obviously over 2000. So not only does this help you proc your ability better, destroy 2 of your opponent's monsters, and give you a great target for all of your life point heal, it also will do 1000 damage at the start of each of your opponent's turns. Plus it also has the added bonus of being Marik's signature card, so it gets the cool 3D animation whenever you summon it, if you're into that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the talking part of this video. There will be gameplay at the end that will show this deck in action. If you're a little bit still confused, feel free to check that out, or even ask just questions down in the comments. It's pretty easy to play once you've seen it in action. It's not a difficult deck to play, it may take a bit of practice to get the anti-magic arrows working when you want to, and getting little combos off like with Enchanted Javelin for the golden apples. So thank you guys for watching, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Duel!